Okay. So welcome everyone. It's great to see this nice sized crowd here to listen in on the latest scoop, I guess you could say, which is happening down in the Keys. We have two guest speakers joining us today, and also our president, Michael Anderson, who's going to tell you a little bit about ADFC, because I know we have some people on the call who are not members, and I encourage you to join. It's free, and it will just allow you to know what we're up to and when we have trips coming up and when we are doing our webinars. And it's simple. It's on the website. You just hit the join button, fill out a simple form, and you can be a member. So joining us today, we have the volunteer coordinator for the Lower Keys Mote Marine Lab, Holly Stanton, and then also the education program manager for Reef Renewal USA, Gabrielle Rosenbacher. We're going to start out with Mike Anderson, who's the president of ADFC and on the board. So Mike, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yep. Pleased to talk with everyone today. I want to start off with this week. ADFC is 5 years old. All right, we're made up of volunteer members and a volunteer director, board of directors. We have two main goals. One is to engage divers to help scientists stabilize the coral reefs. The second is to increase awareness in our membership, the dive community, and the general public about the importance of the ecosystem and the vital role coral play. We do this through webinars and social media. We've now worked with 9 different foundations. Last year we worked with 6, and this year we are scheduled to work with 7. When we're on site, we help with everything from coral tree nursery maintenance to reef maintenance, predator removal, reef monitoring, outplanting of coral and sponges, and we've also been known to do ocean cleanup of trash. All right. We're trying to build an army. The community that we need is the dive community, the entire dive community. The more that we can engage this, the more help the foundations can get to help stabilize the reefs. The scientists cannot do this alone. All right, so how can you help? You can engage in some of the trips that we do, let other divers know about ADFC, attend webinars like this, interact with our social media, like it, repost it, dive the cause and dive for the adventure of this, all right? And membership is free to all certified divers. We've changed that a little bit around the time of the coral crisis in 2023, that summer, where the ocean reached 101.4 degrees, and it's now all hands on deck. So right now I'd like to turn it back to Elisa.
Okay, I'm just going to introduce you to our guest speakers. Thank you very much, Michael. And to start with, volunteer coordinator Holly Stanton from the Lower Keys Mote Marine Lab is going to present for us. We're going to be working with both of these organizations this summer, the first week in June. So if you're interested in getting some hands-on coral restoration work, please sign up for the trip June 1st through the 7th. Get down to the Keys and work with these groups, these organizations. All right, Holly, your way.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Lovely to meet all of you guys. Just to reiterate, my name's Holly Stanton. I am the volunteer coordinator down here in the Lower Keys, particularly Summerland Keys, where we operate out of, although we do have multiple locations all throughout Florida that that I'll mention and touch on a little bit in this presentation. But just wanted to give all of you a little bit of an overview of Mote, what we do. We do so much more than just coral. Although coral is primarily what my job consists of, I manage all of our volunteers, whether that is in water or on land. So much of coral restoration happens on land. A lot of the work that we're able to do is translated to our land-based nursery, where we're able to care for our animals. We're able to do a lot of research on disease. We're able to reproduce corals on land, as well as a variety of other different projects that I'll touch on in this presentation. So Please feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat. I think we'll have an opportunity at the end of our other guest speakers presentation to answer your questions, but super happy to talk about the work that we do, and we're very grateful to have stewards like all of you guys who are passionate about what we do and want to be involved with the work that we do on the reefs. Awesome. So Mote, our mission is to be an independent nonprofit research organization, and we are dedicated to advancing marine and environmental science that leads to new discoveries, revitalization, sustainability, and greater public understanding of our oceans through innovative research, education, as well as outreach. So we were founded by Dr. Eugenie Clark in the 1960s. She is the original founder for Mote Marine Laboratory. We started actually with doing shark research and trying to advocate for sharks in how we can create a sustainable environment with them, and how sharks are not man-eating creatures that most people believe them to be. So she was our original founder for Mote Marine Laboratory. We started in Cape Hayes, which is kind of close to Sarasota on the west coast of Florida. And since then, we were able to receive a very substantial donation from a gentleman named Mr. William R. Mote, and he was able to fund a lot of the work that we are able to do now. He moved us from a single lab space in Cape Hayes to a larger facility in Sarasota, which is where we now conduct majority of our research. And so he was a philanthropist at the time, and that is the reason why our organization is named Mote, is after this gentleman here. So Mote does not stand for any acronym. It does come from a very important person in Mote's history. So, like I mentioned, we have quite a few locations in Florida. Our main headquarters and base of operations is in Sarasota, Florida, on the west coast, although we now have 8 and soon to be 9 locations all throughout the state. So since our one-room laboratory that was started by Dr. Eugenie Clark, we have now grown to include over 38 programs and centers of research in our research enterprise. So things consisting of seagrass research, we do seabirds, we also do manatees, sea turtles, sharks, corals, anything that you can really think of related to the marine environment. We have studied it in some capacity. So some of our locations, like I mentioned, Sarasota is our main base of operations. We have our laboratories and we have our aquariums there. We also have a aquaculture research park, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which we do a lot of crab research. We have our outreach center, the Anna Maria City Pier, currently under construction after hurricane. The hurricanes in October came through. And we also have 3 locations in the Keys that we do coral research and restoration. So we have our International Center for Coral Reef Research and Restoration on Summerland Key. That's where I'm based. That's where we'll be housing the trip in June. We also have a coral nursery in Islamorada and a nursery in Key Largo as well, in addition to 2 public exhibits in NOAA facilities in Key West and also in Islamorada. So smaller little exhibits that we consider to be part of our research enterprise. The 9th location will be opening in summertime of this year. So we have a new aquarium that is set to open. We had a bit of pushback with the hurricanes, but we're very excited to open a brand new aquarium, state-of-the-art facility focused on science education and also to showcase our amazing animals. So these are our locations here in the Keys. Summerland Keys, where we will be hosting the June trip for ADFC. It is our largest facility that we have. We're able to do a little bit more than just coral restoration. We do crab restoration. We also do coral reproduction. We have an ocean acidification lab, and we also do coral health and disease. So we have a much larger facility that we can conduct all of our activities. We host groups like yourselves. We also run educational programs, and we can afford to have scientists stay on site with us, as well as traveling groups, school groups that can stay and do research with us. And our Islamorada and Key Largo facilities are more of our satellite campuses. So we still have nurseries, they're just at a slightly smaller scale. But citizen science is our really big outreach component to Mote. So citizen science allows Mote to involve the educated public, such as yourselves, in our research, our conservation work, and our efforts to restore coral reef ecosystems. So you don't have to have studied marine science in college. You don't have to have a background in marine science to be able to participate. citizen science is a way for us to bridge the gap between those who are still passionate about it and want to explore areas of marine science, but don't necessarily have that particular experience. So here we have expanded to doing a variety of different citizen science initiatives. One of those is our partnership with Scuba Pro. We run trips with them every single month to our nurseries to help do cleaning, as well as outplanting, site monitoring, all those good things. We also have a Bleach Watch partnership. So what we do is we educate the public on how to report on bleaching and how to report on diseasing. It's a really quick and easy online training that you can do, and you can become a citizen scientist just by sending us reports on reef conditions as you're going out. We have a substantial volunteer and internship program. All that information can be found on our website, but we do have long-term opportunities for those looking to get more involved on a longer scale. We partner with combat wounded veterans and scuba nauts. They are traveling groups of combat wounded veterans, and also scuba nauts are a younger generation of new divers who are traveling around the States and want to do some dive opportunity stuff. And iCare is our partnership in Islamorada. They do a lot of nursery maintenance for us in Islamorada. But why are coral reefs really important? Why are we extending all of this energy, money, time, trying to focus on coral reefs? I'll touch a little more on kind of the situation that is kind of happening down here in the Keys. But coral reefs are really important to us since we are located in a very isolated area of the country. We don't have a lot of barriers from storm surge. We get hurricanes frequently. We're in a very vulnerable space. But coral reefs are really important to buffering a lot of that storm surge, and any damage that hurricanes will come through usually get mitigated quite a lot through coral reefs. I know back in 2017, Hurricane Irma came through, and we had the eye of the storm actually just 1 key over from us here on Summerland. We have buoys constantly pinging us out at the reef with the wave height. And what we were getting was about 25 to 30 feet of storm surge out at the reef, just 30 minutes offshore. But here on the Key, we actually only saw about 5 feet of storm surge. So all of that residual storm surge was being buffered significantly by the reef. So the reef is our main protector, keeping us safe here, and is worth over $1.5 billion worth of protection for us. So whether that be indirectly or directly, they're really important to protecting us humans, as well as fish. They provide a really great habitat for fish to live in, really supports our fishing industry, our tourism industry, and provides lots of jobs and income for people, especially in the Keys. About over half of the people in the Keys rely on the reef in some capacity, whether directly or indirectly. So very important. And corals are in some way photosynthetic, so they provide oxygen to the environment and can also remove harmful toxins. I know a lot of you are already familiar with corals, but to do a recap for those of you who may not be as familiar, corals are essentially colonies of lots of tiny, small animals built together in a large colony. Corals will sexually mature by size, not by age. So the work that we do tries to expedite that process in getting a coral from a small polyp to a large coral in as small amount of time as possible to allow corals to reproduce naturally on their own in the wild. Corals are part of the jellyfish family, so they do have stinging tentacles and polyps that are able to feed from any plankton or sediment that's moving through the environment. And they also house tiny zooxanthellae symbionts within their tissues. That's the little zoomed in picture there on the left that remain within their tissues. And those zooxanthellae symbionts are a type of algae that can also be a way for the coral to get its nutrients. We all know that bleaching is a result of the coral expelling all of its zooxanthellae symbionts, and as a result, the coral is no longer able to receive those nutrients that the zooxanthellae provide to the coral. So as a result, the coral will eventually erode away. The tissue will disappear if it no longer has the nutrients to supply itself, and after a long amount of time, eventually the coral will die and just the skeleton will remain. So very important that we are able to understand this symbiotic relationship between the two and how corals operate to allow them to grow to their best potential here. But the problem that we have seen here in the Keys is almost a near total failure of natural coral reproduction success. So the work that we do does focus a lot on assisted sexual reproduction. So bringing back a lot of colonies that we've outplanted to our lab where we can replicate reef dynamics here on site and actually observe coral spawning in our own tanks. We're able to fertilize those ourselves. We're able to grow those corals from babies. But what we really want to do is try to focus on how we can get those corals naturally reproducing as frequently and successfully as possible on their own out on the reef. So this is due to a lot of factors, the reason we've seen such a decline. Yes, there is a lot less coral, but with things like interruptions in their seasonal cues, so those really high thermal fluctuations that we see can really affect the cues for them to spawn. Poor ocean conditions, lots of pollution, increased disease, of course, hurricanes, definitely. All of those things really impact coral growth and also their reproduction cycles. So this figure here just goes to show how since the 70s, we used to have so much elkhorn coral, so much staghorn coral. It used to be littered everywhere. But now in 2004, in that image there on the bottom right, we've seen a huge shift to now having algae-dominated reefs rather than hard corals being dominated. So we used to see about a 60% coverage of corals here in the Keys. Now it's down to about 2 to 3%. So really significant decline. Although soft corals are still very beautiful and pretty, they don't provide those same ecological niches that the hard corals will provide to the reef. So they don't provide the same kind of storm surge buffering. They are not the same organism itself, so the reef does have a change in the ecology of it. So here at Mote, our goal, a 20-year plan that we have, is to restore 52 football fields worth of coral. And that is going to increase its numbers to 25% of that once 60% that we saw. So we began all of our initiatives in 2008. We have outplanted 244,000 since that year. Our largest outplant was 2,000 corals in a single day. And here on site, we produce an average of about 1,000 fragments per week using a process called microfragmentation. This allows our corals to grow in a land-based nursery in their genotypic groups in small raceways. And then we can use those corals and outplant them onto the reef or into our in situ nursery. But our efforts essentially allow our corals to grow at a rate of about 25 to 40 times faster here on site and compared to what they would be in the wild. So this is an example of what outplanting does here at Mote. What we can do is grow our corals here on site. We can glue those onto the reef with either cement or epoxy. And after a couple months, those corals will start to grow and fuse together. The reason that we plant them in these clusters, we do it in a systematic way so that all these corals are genetically identical copies of each other. They were fragged from the same coral, so they're all exactly the same genetic-wise. So after a few months, they will grow and fuse together since they recognize each other as being exactly the same. They will not compete for space, but instead, in a couple months, we can get this larger coral instead of a smaller one in just a number of months. So it does allow the coral to become sexually mature in far less time than it would be had you just planted a single coral. So these are some pictures of our raceways that we have. I believe these are our Key Largo raceways. You'll see some of our corals growing. You'll see some of our larger fragments that we got as rescues from the Coast Guard. But this is the way that we grow a lot of our corals. Most of these that you'll see here are considered our massive corals. So things like green coral, star coral, starlet coral, things like that. But we can also have more of our branching species kept out in our in situ nursery, or we can hang them. There's a little, in that top left picture, there's a little fiberglass tree that would have some monofilament hanging and probably some staghorn or something hanging from it as well. So depending on the species, there are many different ways that you can grow those corals. These are some pictures of our in situ nursery. So we have people regularly go in there to check to see if some of these corals would be able to get outplanted based on their size. And that picture on the right-hand side that you'll see is some of our spawning colonies. So the ones that we will bring back during the spawning season, which is in August, to monitor over time. And Mike asked a great question. When do we determine when we outplant versus when we do other things? So for us, outplanting is mostly done in the winter months when it is not very hot. We have found that outplanting our corals in the summertime reduces the viability of them. So they typically will not do so well and they will not fare as well as when they were outplanted in the winter time, simply because it's too hot for them and too stressful. So unlikely that we will be outplanting in June. Most of our citizen science work that's done in June is doing bleach watch reports for us, and also cleaning our nurseries as well and doing maintenance in those. So this is just an image of what microfragmentation is for those of you who are not familiar. We take some of our corals and we use a diamond bandsaw to essentially break apart our corals into smaller pieces. As a result, they are genetically identical to each other. And we can glue those onto ceramic plugs and grow those in our nursery, but they can continue doing asexual reproduction. So like I'll explain now in a little bit, corals can reproduce asexually and also sexually. So sexually being spawning, you have two parent colonies producing genetically different babies, and you get, as a result, a lot of unique genotypes. Diversity is always very important when it comes to coral reproduction. And they can also reproduce asexually. So that's through fragmentation, that process that I just showed you. So you'll, as a result, genetically identical replicates of a single colony. The other really cool component of our research is doing Caribbean king crab research. We aquaculture a species of spider crabs. They are a native species here in the Florida Keys, and they inhabit coral reefs, and they also hide in caves and in our mangroves. Most of the time they're active at night, so they're nocturnal, and they are herbivorous, which means they eat a lot of algae and plants. The reason this is really valid to our research is because algae is becoming such an issue right now with the overgrowth on our reefs. So we have come up with this idea that what if we were to outplant Caribbean king crabs to kind of graze down most of the algae to allow corals to reproduce, find places to settle, be able to survive much better, have less competition. And these guys are by far the most efficient grazer on the reef. You have parrotfish, you have urchins, you have other organisms, manatees, they eat seagrass, but we have found that the grazing rates of these crabs are so incredible that they can really graze down so much algae to limit that outcompeting of algae to corals. So we will aquaculture those here on site. We have a whole lab dedicated to it. We'll rear them in our systems, and once they reach a carapace width of 30 millimeters, we will outplant those with the hope that they will maintain a lot of that algae growth out on the reef. So pretty cool area of innovative science and research. But other ways that you can help support our mission and the work that we do, you can follow us on our Facebook or our Instagram page. The handle for that is Protect Our Reefs. We also have a partnership with the DMV. We have a Mote license plate that you can purchase, and that's an automatic $25 donation to Mote and the work that we do that funds a lot of our projects, the grant work that we do, and all of our activities. We get a lot of our funding from that license plate. We take donations on our website. You can adopt corals as well. You can also participate in one of our outplant programs or our Scuba Pro sponsorship. You guys are part of that, our Citizen Science Initiative. We do that Bleach Watch citizen science training that you can get educated on, and then, of course, our volunteering and internship programs. I'll save questions for the end, but thank you all so much for your attention. Looking forward to answering those questions, but yeah, we'll do that, I guess, after the next presentation. And I'll try and drop my email in the chat, too, if any of you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask about Mote or anything like that. Feel free to reach out to me directly.
Thank you, Holly, very much. It was a great presentation. And we're going to turn it over to Gabrielle in just a second. I did want to mention that we will be working with Plant a Million Corals during this trip. We'll have a day with Dr. David Vaughn when we're down in June. And so with any luck, we'll be doing some of that fragmentation with his organization. So a really hands-on trip. And now I want to turn it over to Gabrielle Rosenbacher, the Education Program Manager for Reef Renewal USA.
Thank you so much. Is my screen sharing okay?
Yes.
Okay,
great.
Wonderful. I just can't see you all, so I won't imagine all of you. But I did see some familiar faces from the webinar that I attended last year, so it's good to see all of you again. And really just thank you for having me and for highlighting Reef Renewal. I know the team is looking forward to working with a group of you come this June. So again, my name is Gabrielle. I'm the Education Program Manager at Reef Renewal USA. If you haven't heard of us before, we are a coral restoration nonprofit organization based here in the Florida Keys. We began operations in 2019 by our founders, Ken Niedermeyer and Mike Echevarria. So we are a relatively young organization, but we are growing every year. So we recently have grown from 3 to 5 employees as we have onboarded 2 new restoration directors to oversee our work in our 2 regional in situ coral nurseries in the Keys. One is off of Tavernier and one is off of Big Pine Key near Lou Key. So in addition, we have around 15 or 16 what we call pop-up nurseries, which are a smaller scale nursery positioned at our reef sites near our outplanting sites. So along with all of this operational and restoration work, we also work in education and outreach in the local community and engage with people of all ages. So since I believe many of you are familiar with our work and with coral restoration in general, I am going to just jump right into the meat of things and give you kind of an update of where we are now and also a sense of just our overarching mission and our overarching goals and the efforts that we are doing. So as many of you know, we had a severe bleaching event in the summer of 2023. So that summer, the Keys reefs took an extremely hard hit and lost a lot of the remaining corals left on our reefs. Additionally, a lot of our practitioners had lost a lot of our coral stock in our nurseries. So it was a huge turning point in the field of restoration for our organization. And since then, we have been working extremely hard. And we always come back to our overarching question, and our mission is, can reefs be restored at this point? And what will that actually look like to us? So we are trying to ensure that we are working with innovative methods and the most hopeful solutions to continue trying to restore these reefs. So what we've realized is that we might not be able to actually restore the reefs to the way that they were 40 years ago, realistically, but we can help restore some of those most essential functions of the reef that Holly even was talking about in her presentation, like providing habitat for marine creatures, carbon sequestration, providing that structure that will eventually break down wave energy, and so on. So we have been working on really looking at the coral species that have done well through that event and the ones that hadn't. And what we realized is that we need to move beyond staghorn and elkhorn coral at Reef Renewal. And we are doing this because much of our staghorn and elkhorn had not survived, as simple as that, unfortunately. And as much as we are trying to recover the coral cover on our reef, we want to ensure that these corals are actually going to survive through many of the stressors that they're going to see in their given lifetime here on the reef. So that said, we need to find our heat and disease resistant corals, because what yesterday's catastrophe was, tomorrow's might be a different type of catastrophe. So we need to develop those new genetic lines of resistant corals. And at the end of the day, we need to find ways to do all of this at scale and for less money. So because of all these changes, we recently actually modified our mission so that it would accurately describe the work that we are doing and showcasing that we can really just ebb and flow with the times. So our new mission now states that we are to produce and outplant resilient corals of the future at an unprecedented scale. So we are looking at shifting our work to the corals that will have the best hope for survival. Corals that have been exposed to extreme heat, to extreme cold, to diseases, and that come from diverse habitats. So maybe those corals came from canals where they're really going in and out with the tides, or where they really see really high highs of heat and really low lows of that cold temperatures. And this is really showing us that we need to continue working with our boulder coral species at a greater scale versus our elkhorn and staghorn. So one way that we are going to be shifting in our methods is that we're going to be focusing on these boulder coral species, and we're also going to be working with larger coral fragments instead of those smaller boulder plugs that you might have seen in either our nurseries, or usually that's what a lot of practitioners are growing on. We are instead going to be shifting toward a larger plug, double or triple the size, in hopes that this will aid in their ultimate survival. So bringing it back to the 2023 bleaching event, Reef Renewal was posed with a great problem, and that was having access to land-based facilities. So with all of our coral stock being in situ and all of our work and operations being in situ, we quickly realized that we needed some guaranteed space in a facility in case something like this were to happen again. We know something like this very well might happen again, and we just don't know exactly when. So from the 2023 bleaching event, we had shifted our mind to securing a land-based facility where we could have a genetic bank, we could house our corals, and we could also continue to grow them in that facility. So this happens to be in Ruskin, Florida, which is just outside of Tampa, and it is going to be acting in tandem with our in-water nurseries and essentially act as a grow-out facility, but also like a rescue facility in case any other bleaching event or disease event or anything were to occur where we would need this space. I have had questions in the past about volunteer opportunities in Ruskin, and I just will address this quickly now. We are not ready to have volunteers yet, but there will come a time where we are. So just stay tuned for those updates. Now, I want to just talk about some of our community engagement and our volunteer opportunities with us. So we have designed a few different opportunities to engage with people of different commitment levels or experience levels. So we work with either our local volunteers, our visiting volunteers, and we also have an internship program. We actually have 2 internship programs right now, which I'm excited to share about. So our local volunteers are folks who generally live and work in the Florida Keys area. This could be that you're local here for upwards of a month or more at a time. We realize there's lots of seasonal people. That's no problem. You're still a local if you're here for over 4 weeks at a time, that you could really engage in our work, get to know our work, and join us on our work vessels, where you work really intimately with the team and in our coral nurseries or out on the reef. These activities could be really anything from nursery maintenance to outplanting to monitoring, really anything that we need to do on that day. So it's really wonderful to be a local volunteer. You get your hands on a lot of opportunities and a lot of reef restoration. We also work with visiting volunteers, kind of like this group is going to be visiting with us in June. So if you do have a group of people or you work with a dive shop, we essentially will run a dive program for you where we'll coordinate some dates. You will charter the vessel from a local shop, and we can work with you anywhere from 1 to 4 days of field work, having an immersive experience in our coral nurseries or anything else that we might need done on those dates. And lastly, we do have wonderful internship programs. This is like one of my favorite parts of Reef Renewal. I work and run the internships. We have one more of an introductory coral restoration internship program where we work with generally post undergrads to offer them an immersive experience in field work and nonprofit management, and it really gives them a well-rounded experience that prepares them for a future career in marine conservation. They truly are integral to our program and engage with our community. But we have another new exciting internship that's in partnership with the University of Miami, and this is a more advanced internship program that will run for a 1-year term. The next term will start next February, but this is to be working in partnership with the University of Miami and a bunch of other collaborators, and is a really great networking opportunity for an intern, but also a good advancement into perhaps a graduate level degree. So as you saw up here, one thing we have on every list was our online training program. So this is just a quick view of what our online training looks like, and anybody who will be coming and joining us in the water will have access to an account to log on to our online training program and take our courses. So this is really in lieu of a education session with us prior to hands-on field work. And we do it this way because we think that you're able to soak in more information just out of the comfort of your own home before you're able to come and spend time with us. B, you're able to revisit these lessons. So if you go through and you look at something and you want to just go and review that technique, you can turn back. You can always come back to your account here and redo a lesson. We have up to, I think, 13 courses right now housed in our learning management system, and it's essentially a way for our volunteers and our visiting volunteers and our interns to learn all of the techniques and methods that we're using in the water before they come and dive with us. They get to visually see it being done underwater, and it seems to be an extreme help when people are trying to learn and get to know the work that we're doing so that they can be as immersively like part of the work that we're doing on that day. So as I wrap up, I always like to say, first off, continue to spread the word and to raise awareness for the importance of Florida's coral reef and the degradation that it is facing. So you never know who you might be talking to that could be a potential volunteer, potentially donate to our mission, or even just have amazing, innovative ideas on how to help restore our reefs. So if you are interested in volunteering with us, I'm happy to sign you up for our online training that's been developed so you can take those courses before diving with us, or if you're just curious, I'm happy to sign you up for those as well. But if you don't already, you can follow us on our social media on Instagram and Facebook. This is a great way to get updates on our efforts, our current events, things that we're doing if you are interested in volunteering. So it's just a great way to also spread the mission if you share any of those posts, or if you know anybody who's interested in, let's say, an internship program. So lastly, I always end this with, I just want to encourage everybody to continue to make lifestyle changes. Many people ask me how they can help from afar. And truly, I think this goes without saying, is that just continue trying to make less of a impact on the planet by reducing your plastic waste, food waste, getting involved in environmental efforts, and just all of those little things in between. So thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to diving with some of you come June, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. So we're going to open it up now for questions. If you could put your questions in the Q&A, which is under activities in Google Meet. There's this triangle, square, circle. If you have trouble finding that, if you put them in the chat, I'm going to be looking both places. Oh, Michael, you had a question here. Does either foundation depend on state and federal funding? I guess it's whoever wants to start answering that.
Sure, I can take that one.
Sure.
So Mote Marine particularly, we rely on both, but majority of our funding comes from the state. Our license plate is a really big contributor to that. And also like individual private donations that come from the state. So like philanthropists who want to donate money, we get a lot of our funding from them. In terms of federal funding, that would come from NOAA. So some of our grants that we write that are more on like a global scale, we will get federal funding for. So yes, it does get a little bit dicey when it comes to the new administration that's come in and how that will play into some of the work that we will do. But we have been told that our work should remain largely unaffected, which is really, really pleasing to hear. So we should be pretty good. The corals, the coral restoration world and industry is funded through a lot of private organizations and from private donors. So we should remain largely unaffected from that.
Love the license plate. I have 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, Gabrielle? Same question?
Yeah, so we are obviously a much, much smaller organization, and we're much more, we're much younger. So I would say that, again, yes, we work with both federal and state funding, but also through private institutions or foundations. And we are still kind of on the journey of finding each year our sustainable funding for, you know, our years to come. So with all of that being said, we are majorly shifting our focus on private funding and donations and things like that, so that we don't have to rely as much on state or federal funding and grant funding to run our operations. This was obviously in our minds before the new administration had happened, and this had just echoed our efforts on moving in that direction anyways. So after this year, we're hoping to bring in a lot more private institutions, private foundations, philanthropists, things like that to help support our mission for the years to come.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Right.
Sounds similar, doesn't it, Michael Anderson?
Yes.
Our organization is small and young too.
Yeah.
So we have a question here from David Friedman, and you may have answered this, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit. It says, if we aren't located in Florida, is it still possible to be a citizen scientist, and what's the process? I think part of that would be joining one of our trips and coming down and working with you guys, but are there other ways to be this citizen scientist if you're not in Florida? Because we do have members from all over the country.
Yeah, no, it is a very, we get a lot of people who want to be involved, and, we really do appreciate and need all hands on deck when it comes to restoration. But due to the nature of the work that we do, most of it needs to be done in the field or on land here at a nursery. So we are trying to explore ways to make our volunteer program and our citizen science initiatives more robust. For us, up at Mote, we do a lot of work with gliders, so you're able to actually monitor some glider and BRUV surveys that you can do virtually. In terms of coral restoration, though, things can get a little bit challenging. We have been trying to explore and doing a cost-benefit analysis of trying to actually send materials to citizen scientists, some of our snowbirds who are like volunteers here and move away. It's a great way to keep them involved, but we're trying to look at doing possibly sending monofilament that we can have volunteers do remotely and send that back to us already crimped and made so we can hang corals to our coral trees with that. Still kind of something in the works, but I'm sure, as you can understand, the nature of coral restoration can be hard to do remotely. I believe there is some chatter about CRF, another foundation, an organization in the Keys that does coral restoration. They have some volunteers actually sorting through images to train their AI system and algorithm to detect the coral species and even like genotypes, and then trying to determine whether or not that coral would be considered healthy or diseased or bleached or whatever. I don't know too much about that, but I think this might be an up-and-coming kind of area of citizen science, trying to train these AI algorithms to detecting corals and the status of their health without us having to be monitoring them as much. But like you mentioned, Elisa, a lot of the work can be done kind of remotely prior training. So even like the online training that Reef Renewal does, I don't want to answer the question for you, but even our Bleach Watch program, you can take all the training online to learn how to identify things before you go down for a trip or prior to going somewhere that you're planning to do a lot of diving. Can be done before you go down. And so anytime you travel somewhere in Florida, especially in the Keys, you can make those reportings and know kind of what to look for before you come down. So I can share the link for that in the chat if anybody's interested in getting trained on being a Bleach Watch survey diver.
That would be great. Yes, I talked to one of your colleagues, actually, Natalie, about putting together. And I'm putting my email in the chat. I'm down in Florida now in Sarasota permanently, and so I would really like to have a subset of ADFC that can get down to the Keys more often. So if anyone who's on this call, or spread the word, please, who's a diver and wants to be a part of that, please email me and I can add you to the list. So more questions. I know Ed Frankel, I think you had your hand raised. I don't know if it was for a question. Here's another one that we have. Has climate change affected the number of days? Oh, hold on, I just lost it. The number of days that you can get to the reef because of ocean conditions. I think, especially if the outplanting is being done in the winter, I know that there's conditions down there that makes diving in the wintertime challenging here. So
I can take this one. We I guess it's hard to say. Every season is different, and every season I have worked and been here has been different. Historically, our summer season was the calmest, best for outplanting. And since we've had such high heat events, it is no longer the best time for us to be outplanting. So we've been shifting that season sooner. That said, this winter, our team has gone out an incredible amount. I have to say we've had some beautiful weather and we've had some really windy and wavy weather. So if you're not afraid to bear the cold, then I would say at this time, I don't want to say that it has really affected the number of days that we've just been able to go out and have access, but it has affected the work that we are doing in each season. So we have been trying to shift that and make sure the corals are growing in the growing season, that they're being planted in the best planting season. And at least for us, that has shifted since the bleaching event in 2023. But luckily, we've had a lot of wonderful water days this winter already, and hope that that continues.
Great. I had a question about your larger corals that you talked about. So are these what can be called corals of opportunity that are being found that have broken off, or where are you getting the larger ones?
So not necessarily corals of opportunity. At this time, we do actually have a grant where we are collecting corals of opportunity, but that's only for a short period of time. So it's not necessarily like part of our operations. It's just to enhance the stock that we are currently working with. So from that, we are going to be fragmenting them and placing them on larger plugs. So we're in the moment of creating those plugs and making the trays so that everything fits just right for when we put them out there. But our idea is that if we are shifting from a smaller coral frag plug that takes just as long to grow and skirt over the edges, why not work with a bigger frag plug that has more of a chance of survival, hopefully better chance of fusion, and really it's all about the survival at this point. So that just means that when we're fragmenting them into bigger pieces. We're not fragmenting them into small, tiny pieces and putting them on a plug. Although there might be some remnants of a coral that we do cut up, we recognize that will have some of that skirting that is really tiny, and we still want to keep that and preserve that and grow it. So we will have some smaller plugs in rotation in our nursery, but our idea is to move toward those larger frag plugs to hope that this aids in their survival and just put out bigger pieces, because at the end of the day, we want more coral cover on the reef.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Mike, I know you raised your hand here.
Yep. For us, a big part of it is trying to plan when to schedule a trip, because I mean, for locals, if the weather's bad, you don't go, and the next day you could go. For us, it's like you're trying to do a whole week or possibly 2-week block of time. So, I mean, it's been sort of a stay to the summer because it was calmer, better, but there's no outplanting. So if we want to really try and help build those outplanted numbers, it's like, how do we pick the best time of the year to schedule trips to come down? I'm asking you to look at a crystal ball, both of you.
I know. It's tough. We have many of our dive programs do come in May, and May tends to be generally a good time where we are still outplanting, but you have you're starting to get into that summer season. The end of April works as well, but no, you're right, Mike. I mean, at this point, we look at the weather and it's 2 days a week that are good. It might change throughout the week, and then next week we have 2 or 3 days that are good, but it might change throughout the week. So I completely understand where you're coming from. It is definitely a challenge, but I would recommend May or like end of April into May, perhaps for next year.
Look at that for next year. And our backup plan has now been, if we can't get in the ocean, to go visit David Vaughn.
And I don't know if Holly has a different answer about your outplanting or your best seasons. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's very similar. And kind of to tie into that question you asked about how climate change is affecting our initiatives, since it's been getting warmer sooner and staying warmer for longer during the summertime, that's actually narrowing our window to outplanting as well. So now we, you know, don't even look to outplant until, like, we can't outplant past April sometimes just because the water starts heating up, and the corals that we outplant in April are going to have maybe a couple weeks of, you know, cool water before it really starts to heat up, and then it's not worth the investment on our end to outplant these corals with the risk that they are going to be so young and susceptible and vulnerable to that thermal stress. And then we usually pause outplanting, or we'll start outplanting after the summertime in November. So, but the winter time can also be tricky because that's when we get a lot of wind. So it's really a culmination of so many different things that inhibit outplanting, and when you can do things. So it is very, we operate, you know, we try and discuss once a week, okay, what does the weather look like this week? And then how do we like feel about outplanting on this day? And then also trying to balance out all of the other things that we need to do to maintain our sites, because it's not just outplanting. When you go to outplant corals, it's not just physically taking those corals to the site. You actually need to go prior and do a site prep analysis, make sure there's no disease present, so we don't infect any of our current corals with those diseases, or maybe continue to spread that. We have to clean that site prior to outplanting them. There's so many factors that go into it, and then again the training component. So people who, you know, are really good with the land-based stuff may not necessarily have the dive capabilities. So there's so many things that you don't really think of that really play into the whole process and scheduling of that.
Well, we now have a pretty good crew that can sort of show up and adapt to just about anything that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's I think our strongest suit in helping you, because it can be, you know, from just maintenance to outplanting and to whatever. And we hope to grow that even more than it is right now. And
Yeah.
that's a good one. So I think people are going to start dropping off pretty soon.
Right. We've just gotten to the time frame. It was great having both of you here. Thank you so much for joining us and doing the presentations and answering questions. I think everybody here is excited about participating and being a part of your programs when we can.
Yeah, we really appreciate all of you. We can't do what we do without you, and it makes such difference. So we're glad to be able to provide avenues for connecting everybody together and doing the work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Really, thank you.
And thanks to all of the people who participated in the call today. It's great to have you here.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Wish we could be there right now.
It's beautiful.
I'll get in the car.
It's only 6 hours away for you. It's 18 hours
I
away
know.
for me.
Oh.
I get it. All right. Well, thanks, guys. It was great to do this, and really appreciate your help with it all.
Of course. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right.